Welcome to Dad Gives Advice. My name is Orestes, and in this video I want to continue my series on cognitive biases. Here I'm going to cover the sunk cost bias or sunk cost fallacy. This is a fallacy that I fell for many times over the years, and I wish I had learned about it a lot sooner in life. It would have saved me a lot of money. Simply put, the sunk cost fallacy is when you pour more resources into something just because you've already put in a bunch of resources to begin with, without stepping back and making sure that it is still the objectively right thing to do. Many times in the past, when I would do individual stock investing, I would buy a stock and then sometimes it would fall and it would continue to fall, and I would watch it go down further and then continue to go down. Eventually, when it would go down by 40 to 50%, I would think, well, it's got to bounce back from here. So let me put some more money into this thing and hope that it comes back so I can maybe make a little bit, or at least try to break even if it bounces back. And the only reason I really did that was because I had already put a bunch of money in it and lost a bunch of money on this particular stock. And I was hoping it would come back, but I wasn't making a rational choice. I wasn't actually analyzing the situation to see whether this thing would actually turn around, or if it would stay where it was now at the new low point, or continue to go down. And that's essentially the sunk cost fallacy. Pouring more resources into something simply because you've already poured a lot of resources into it. And because of that, it's sometimes called throwing good money after bad. And when it comes to investing in stocks, throwing good money after bad is a big rookie mistake. And the sunk cost fallacy can come up in more than just investment situations. It comes up in many aspects of life. In business situations where money is spent on projects that turned out to be mistakes, sometimes managers will continue to pour more resources and more money into projects just because they've already spent so much on those projects. And it would seem to be wasteful just to drop these things. It even happens in relationships. Did you ever spend way too much time in a bad relationship just because you had already invested a lot of time with a particular person? The key thing to keep in mind is that just because you spent a lot of time or money on someone or something, it's not necessarily the case that you should continue to spend all those resources going forward. You need to look at the situation fresh from the present time and determine whether continuing to spend these resources makes sense, regardless of what you've already spent and already put into it. The important thing to do when you have sunk costs is to carefully, objectively, and dispassionately review the situation, reevaluate the situation, and honestly determine whether or not it does make sense for you to continue to invest these resources going forward. The money, time, and effort has already been spent. There's no getting that back. What you want to try to do is make sure you can avoid wasting resources going forward. And the only way to do that is to honestly evaluate the situation to determine whether it does make sense to continue, or whether it makes more sense to just cut your losses and move on to something else. A classic sunk cost fallacy is when a company pays signing bonuses for new employees. Let's say that a software company is having trouble hiring new software engineers because it's a tough job market and software developers are hard to come by. So they decide to pay $50,000 per new employee as a signing bonus. So that's great for the people that are coming in. They get a nice amount of money to start off, and they're off and running with their new job. Now let's say they hire this new person and they pay them the $50,000. And after a while, they see that this person really isn't what they were expecting. They find that this engineer is not that good. Maybe they're not a high performer. And most of the time when they're working, they're actually making mistakes and adding to the quality problems in the product they have. In many cases, what will happen in this situation is that the boss will look at that and say, well, we've already spent a lot of money on the signing bonus. It took us a very long time to find this person. It took us a long time to train this person. So we've got a lot sunk into this person. Let's continue to work with this person and see if they turn it around. But after a few months, you realize this is not going to be a high performer and this person's really not working out. And again, the evaluation might be, well, we've spent so much into this particular person. It's going to cost us the same amount to start with somebody from scratch to train them up and get them up to speed. So we're going to continue with this particular individual to see if we can either train them up to turn them around, or maybe put them somewhere else where they're not going to be doing as much damage as they're doing now. That's the sunk cost fallacy. What you want to do in this situation is say, you know what, it's not working out. We're going to have to let this person go, let them go on and do something else, maybe somewhere else, and go look for another person who can fill that engineer role in the right way. Even if it costs the company a little bit more money in the form of severance pay, it's going to be worth it in the long run to not have that individual being a drag on the entire department and on the project. It's extremely hard not to fall for the sunk cost fallacy because we have a lot of psychological barriers in place that keep us from doing the right thing sometimes. There are factors like loss aversion that says, well, I've already put in so much into this, I don't want to lose that, so I'm going to try to retain this project or this person or this stock or whatever it might be for a little bit longer in the hopes that I can recover all those losses that I've already incurred. Being overconfident or overly optimistic can also be a problem that could cloud your judgment in these areas. You just have to remember that you're not special compared to anyone else in particular, so just because you doubled down on an investment or you decided to stick with something that had a bunch of sunk cost in it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work out. You have to reevaluate the situation from the point of view of today and determine whether it does make sense to continue to make those investments, and only do so in that case. If you rationally evaluate the situation and determine that going forward you're likely going to have more failure and losses, then it's time to cut your losses and move on to something else. We also sometimes fall for this fallacy because we don't want to be perceived as being wasteful. Others looking around at your behavior might say, well, they put so much money or so much time into that particular project or person or whatever, and now they're just abandoning it and moving on. That seems very wasteful. Well, it's even more wasteful to continue with something that you know deep down inside is just not going to work out. The bottom line here is that the rational analysis in these situations is to only consider whether continuing to invest time or money will have positive returns going forward, without regard to any sunk costs that you might have already put into a particular project, person, or investment vehicle. It's really hard to do, but it's really important in order to avoid throwing good money or good time after bad. That's my quick summary on the sunk cost fallacy. Let me know if you have any comments or questions on this, or if you have any other topic suggestions that you'd like to see me covered. Other than that, thanks for watching and have a great day.